Well, the former President Barack Obama, who has accepted millions of dollars per speech, making the Clintons look pristine when it comes to the level of greed, accepted the JFK Profile and Courage Award. The former president declared in an interview that his decision not to follow his own red line and to refuse to bomb Syria after Assad used chemical weapons on his own people, quote, required the most political courage. The courage not to enforce his own red line, to follow through on his own threats. Never have we heard such self-accredited heroism about one's own passivity. Well, joining me now to discuss the former president's Syria claims, the cyber threat, much more, senior fellow with the London Center for Policy Research, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer.
Hey, hello.
Can you imagine a former president saying that he was, I don't know why we should be surprised. In that speech he was paid over $3 million for, he used the first person singular reference 216 times, and now he seems to award himself a Profile and Courage Award.
I think the courage is being completely separated from reality, Lou. I mean, let's look at this for what it is. The very policy he speaks of, we know now failed. So why on earth would you draw attention to a policy that oh, we wanted to make some time to get the weapons out of there? It would have been one thing, Lou, if the weapons actually were removed, but we know they weren't. And worst of all, his administration knew that in the end. They just blew it off. More importantly, the failure to follow through with that threat, with that
had
policy,
its own consequences.
Had its own consequences. Look, I've talked to generals on both, who basically were ended up being politically drawn to both sides. And one of them is General Tony Zinni, who worked for President Clinton as his commander of Central Command. And General Zinni said, you can never, as a president, draw that red line and not follow through, or else you will damage the prestige of that office, and more importantly, people will not take you seriously. And that's exactly what happened from that moment forward.
Well, let me just say that Tony Shaffer, the colonel, has had a long experience in cyber warfare.
Yes, sir.
That dates back decades, in point of fact. And what is your thinking when you think about the Obama administration, when the OPM, Office of Personnel Management in the federal government, was hacked by the Chinese, 30 million names and data files given up.
To include mine.
And then we were told that the next time it's going to be war. That was the clear implication. And now Here we are in 2017 in May, watching 150 countries hit by a cyber attack, and we know full well the United States government doesn't have the capacity to respond or forestall or defend even its own assets.
Yeah, let's break this down. And yeah, my record was also compromised in that Chinese hack. And ironically, Lou, when you look at what happened during President Obama's watch, all these great technologies, and think about the billions of dollars that General Alexander received as the commander of Cyber Command and NSA to actually do nothing with. Another thing I know for a fact, Lou, back when they had the first WikiLeaks leaks, when they were disclosed all that information, look, we knew where that information was. They chose to just let it get released anyway. It's insane that we build this technology and we don't do anything with it. So and by the way, the response to the Chinese hack, Lou, was a strongly worded memo to the Chinese saying, hey, don't do that again. So
akin to strongly worded memo to follow, I believe.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of like, why even have the capability if you choose not to use it?
Well, I'm not convinced that we've got the capability, because we're not defending and we are not retaliating. And I can only find one reason why that would occur, and that is because that we are woefully inadequate and unprepared as a result of the president who held office for the previous 8 years.
Well, I'll say this. We have the best and brightest people who have great ideas, but often those ideas are held back by the policy.
Well, nothing's holding them back now.
Right.
And Tony, I got to tell you, I think most Americans are sick and tired of watching us act like buffoons in the face of this kind of assault. And, and the world is suffering as well, as you well know.